I'm very comfortable talking about my work. These are things that like I've processed, for the most part already. So, and I brought them here to share. So I want to talk about them. There are so many benefits to being creative because it's just a different part of your brain that you get to use. Um, and it's also like obviously healing. Um, so it's just a little wonderland that you can just step into whenever you need it, when you're kind of overwhelmed or if you're like overstimulated or there's just too much to process um, in life. You can just kind of go to art to get you through it. I think being artistic and expressing yourself in different ways is just a basic human need. The concept for this piece originally wasn't what it became. As with all artistic endeavors, it kind of ends up being something completely different. Um, but at the end, at least for these four, um, like kind of almost teardrops, they represented uh, blood drops and like hmm, to explain this, it was kind of like the constant punishment that I would give myself for the same uh, reasons that I would, shame myself because I wasn't fitting in, um, or nobody around me could understand exactly what I was trying to say. I was just expressing myself differently than anyone around me. So there was like a lot of lack of understanding. Um, and then the nails inside uh, of them uh, is just like reopening those wounds over and over and over again, um, and just keep like hammering in those same punishments that I would give myself. Um, and then these around here, which I've heard ribs um, as one of the uh, things that people saw in it. But when I created it originally underneath of this kind of mask that is being torn apart, um, they are like fingernails. And the way that I did it was by kind of reaching in with my own fingers and like just, it's like, where would I start tearing from? Like tearing this mask off. Um, and so those are all like my finger indents, and then I put the fake nails in. Um, so kind of as like a reflection of looking at myself and seeing how worn out and tired I was and exhausted from trying to hide for years, um, and fit in, uh, and just start, tearing those false masks apart. Um, and yeah, so fingernails, blood, constant shame, punishment, being plugged in there. it's a bit of like looking back, um, and um, processing the things that were said to me that uh, made me come up with all these mean words that I would tell myself. Because they never said, maybe they did, but it wasn't always so direct as like lazy or messy, or um, nobody directly would be like, oh, you're not worth it. But it was always things that made me feel that way. Um, and it hurt me to look back and push away all of those mean words and just see who I was. And I was such like a bright light, and like I was so curious and creative at, in my own way at that time, which is what that, that little light is in the middle of the U, the O of the U. He's like, that's me, like, and my younger self. And like, I thought I was the world, not in some kind of godly sense, but just I had the whole world ahead of me. I had the whole world inside of me, and I could just explore it. And I was so imaginative and creative. So that's why that is like blue and green. And then there's the yellow part on the inside, the light in the world. And then you can just see all of those negative words just kind of oozing in and darkening that light. And that's just me taking a peek inside of that and recognizing and becoming aware. And when I was younger, I just called it isolation because it just made me isolate. I, part of, even though, yeah, people had a hard time understanding me, like I also shut myself away, because at that point I was like, well, who wants to even be around me if I'm so weird and, yeah. It was always 4 o'clock. Oh, it was always 4 o'clock in the morning. Still is sometimes, I mean, it represents a few different things, waking up with those panic attacks, going through withdrawal, and waking up at 4 a.m. and just having just the worst nights of shaking and nausea, not being able to like think straight, not being in control of my body because of how bad like I was going through it. And just the days after of feeling so worn out because like I'm not getting any sleep, and like wanting that sleep, and the roses on there, that I put in the middle, it's kind of like a symbol of, there's a bit of romanticizing that you can do with your experience at that time to kind of get yourself through it, like there is with with addiction. You almost, I mean, at least for me, there's a bit of like glamorizing that that you do with it, um, as a way of coping. Um, and I think obviously social media and just media in general has something to do with it. You know, you see a lot of shows glamorizing addiction, and struggles in general. So you kind of go into that like a delusion or fairy tale. It is very important to see art in person. I think that, I personally think that what you guys are doing here at Anno Artem is extremely important. The messages and the presentation of the exhibits here are very impressive and well curated. And every time I've come here to see a show, I've found it to be very fulfilling and thought-provoking. So, and the interactiveness that you guys create just makes it all the more special. So I think it's very important for people to come out here and to read the stories of like the local artists